Alright, so today I want to take a walk down memory lane. I actually have this really big reticulated python. Her name is Lucy. She's about 90 pounds, about 17 feet long, and I actually have quite a few videos all the way from the beginning, right after I bought her, just as a little hatchling, all the way up through the years, all the way up to this point. And I just wanted to kind of show you what I have over on YouTube. I pulled up some of these old videos. Some of them aren't that great because I started with a really bad camera, but you can actually see some of the really interesting growth spurts that she's been through. It's amazing how fast she grew, and it seems like she's not slowing down. She is getting bigger and bigger as time goes on. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump over to YouTube and show you some of these interesting videos. Alright, so I'm over here on YouTube and I pulled up some of my old videos. As a matter of fact, I went through almost all 600 of my videos and kind of pulled out the most interesting ones that featured Lucy. And pretty much, you know, some of them I just kind of skipped ahead to where we can just see her so we don't have to sit through so much footage. It was quite a bit of work actually going through all those videos. And as a matter of fact, this one was uploaded October 15, 2016, which is probably about 6 months after I actually recorded this. She was actually born, I'm pretty sure she was born in October of 2015, about a year before I actually uploaded this. So this is probably, I think this is the earliest video I have of Lucy, and she's a little bit bigger than when I actually got her. I'd say she's maybe twice as big, but she is a really cute little snake. As a matter of fact, if you go to a reptile show and you're looking for some snakes, some reticulated pythons, they're probably about this size or a little bit smaller. And let me tell you, those little snakes can turn into monsters. It is pretty incredible. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna come over here to the next video, and this one was just about at the same time frame. In this one, I was actually feeding her a rat, and you can actually see, it's funny when you feed a snake a rat, you can kind of see just how big the snake is. It wasn't really big at all. It's kind of funny when she grabs this rat. As a matter of fact, that rat is pretty big for that little snake. But the funny thing about reticulated pythons is they're really long and skinny. You wouldn't realize how big they are until I actually pulled that tub all the way open. You can actually see she's super, super skinny. And it's funny when she grabs that rat, she just kind of goes into the trance there and just kind of grabs onto that rat. I thought that was pretty funny. So this is the third video I have. She's a little bit bigger. This one actually was in August 15 of 2016. So I'm thinking this is probably when she was, I'm thinking August, September, October. She's probably about 8 months old in this video, and she's actually on the couch in my living room in front of my African cichlid aquarium. This is a really cool video. It's not very long, but she's just kind of slithering along the back of my couch and just kind of going right in front of that really cool aquarium. It was a really cool shot. This is kind of like the perfect size for reticulated pythons because you can still pick them up and handle them, and they're not too much to handle. Then my next video here is actually in April of 2018. So she's quite a bit older in this one. This is like, I had a huge gap where I didn't actually, wasn't really recording her on a regular basis. If I would have actually done it again, I would have like broke out my camera every month and checked her out. But this is actually when I started running into problems, and she had a little respiratory infection and a little bit of, it almost looked like mouth rot or something. And in this one, I started treating with an F10 vapor, just trying to work on her. I was keeping her in these boa tubs, and she kept pushing and pushing on the boa tub. She definitely did not want to be in that boa tub, and that's kind of what I was doing in this video. I was kind of showing how to treat with the F10 vapor. And then over here is another one where I actually fed her. She's in a slightly bigger boa tub. I moved her over here, and you can see I'm feeding her a really big rat. She's definitely bigger over here. This one is in May of 2018. 16, 17, she's probably about 2.5 years old right there. She is quite a bit bigger than in that little hatchling video. She is really big. And then over here, we'll just keep moving forward through time. This one's actually in May of 2018. This is, she's kind of, check out the tub. You can actually see how big she is in this one. She's growing super fast. Seems like the bigger she gets, the faster she grows. It's pretty amazing. She still fits pretty well into the boa tub on this video. And this is actually, I was actually just going through my whole collection of snakes in this video, kind of showcasing all my snakes. She's a really beautiful snake. I just wish she didn't get so big. As a matter of fact, even in this video, she was still big enough to handle pretty comfortably by myself, but she actually outgrew that, where I pretty much need a second person now when I'm handling the snake. She is really beautiful. So let's fast forward here. This is actually in May. This is another one in May. You can kind of see her a little bit better here. And I actually went to a paper substrate for a while and then went back and forth between the paper and the coconut husk, and she kept pushing and pushing on the inside of this boa tub. She was not happy. I eventually went to a different type of enclosure. This was in June, about a month later. And the interesting thing about retics is, like in this video right here, you can actually see she is really super fat because, you know, sometimes they'll eat a lot of rats, and the weird thing is you can feed them a bunch of rats and you can almost see like the little bit of a mouth infection right there, zoomed in a little bit. I was still struggling with the respiratory infection in this video. But you can definitely tell she's eating really well. She's looking really beefy. I almost thought I was gonna lose her because of that respiratory infection. She was really bad. Got to the point where her mouth was really swollen and she had a bunch of gray stuff kind of foaming up in her mouth, which was really bad. This is in June, so this was the next month. And actually, you know, I was treating with the F10 vapor. So essentially what you do is you put F10 into a fogger mixed with water, and you fog it in every few days. And you can definitely see on this one, her mouth's looking a lot better. It definitely cleared it up, but it didn't solve the problem. And you can see at this point, she is eating some really big rats. It is pretty amazing how big of a rat she can actually eat at this point. So over here, this was July. You can see she's getting a little bit bigger month by month, and she's still eating the rats pretty good. The other thing is if you actually watch some of these videos, you watch how close she gets to my hand right there. It's a different game now. I actually have more respect for reticulated pythons. I open the enclosures with a snake hook, and I always wear gloves when I'm feeding. I definitely do not want to get bit by a retic. I've seen some people get really bad injuries when they get bit with reticulated pythons. So I've definitely learned over the years, kind of change things up, especially like this one right here. This video, she's like popping her head out. That is really dangerous, walking up to a snake like that with a rat in your hand. I've since learned that you really don't want to go that close to a reticulated python in feeding mode like that. And sometimes I've had some really close calls where she'll jump out and almost get me. Luckily, I've never been bit by one of these big reticulated pythons. But in this one, you can definitely tell. I opened the tub and she was coming out in feeding mode. I didn't have a rat, didn't intend to feed her, and I had to use the hook to actually get her back. This is in August of 2018, so you can definitely tell she is getting bigger and bigger as we move forward. Now let's move forward to the next one here. This is in September, so this is another month. And a lot of these I was just going through the feeding videos, the feeding compilation, where I was actually feeding my snakes. And you can definitely tell she's still pounding the really big rats. As a matter of fact, she can eat probably 10 of those rats now, pretty much back to back. I feed her like, 10 rats over a span of a few days, and then give her like 2 or 3 weeks off, and pretty much go through different. It's funny how she kind of grabbed that rat and kind of went down slowly. But you can definitely tell in this video, you can definitely tell she's thinned out quite a bit. So with retics, it's really funny because if you don't feed them for a really long time, or if they go on a fast, they can really thin out really a lot. And then you feed them a bunch of rodents and it seems like they just balloon. And then once they digest those rodents, it kind of goes back down. So it's really hard to tell exactly how much of that is body mass and how much is just kind of swelling from eating the rodents. It's kind of interesting with retics. So here's another one. This is in September. And you can definitely tell she's still in that tub in September of last year. So that was, that's what, 14 months? This is 14 months ago. She was still a pretty big snake. As a matter of fact, now she would not fit in these tubs. The only reason I move her back into these tubs now is actually to clean her and close her, and she barely fits in there anymore. She's still a handful at this size, but let me tell you what 14 months can do to a snake. It is amazing. So this is another one in September. Still going through, and I pretty much moved her from one tub to the other. As a matter of fact, this boa tub is a little bit bigger than the other boa tub. So when you actually look at her in this tub, it's a little bit deceiving because she looks a little bit smaller in this video, but the tub is actually a little bit bigger. There's two different types of ARS boa tubs. You can definitely tell she is a big girl in this video. So this one is where I moved her to a new enclosure. So this is pretty much the last video that I had her in here. And let me tell you, I was still struggling with a really bad respiratory infection. It would clear up for a little bit, and then it would she would kind of relapse and go back into that respiratory infection. And she did not want to be in this tub for whatever reason. She kept pushing and pushing, trying to get out, and I was getting so frustrated. And I finally talked to a guy that was specialized in reticulated pythons, and he eventually told me that the retics, once they get to a certain size, they really don't like boa tubs. What they really like is they like enclosures like this one, and this is what I eventually went to. And let me tell you, as soon as I put her in this enclosure, she has never really pushed on the enclosure really bad to get out. The only time she really pushes to get out of something like this is it's if the temperature is a little bit too hot and she wants to get to a cooler temperature, then sometimes she'll try to push to actually get out of that enclosure. So I've noticed in my bigger enclosure that if she starts pushing, I can just dial down the temperature a little bit and she stops pushing, and then she's perfectly fine. So if we move over here, this is actually November of 2018, which is pretty much almost exactly a year ago. It's 2 months later, and you can tell every time we look at the snake, it's a little bit bigger and a little bit bigger, starting to fill up this tub, this enclosure pretty good. I'd say she's probably, I think she's about 50 pounds at this point, and probably gained about 30 pounds since this. Is pretty incredible. So let's just keep moving on to the next one. This is actually December of 2018, so this was 11 months ago, and look at how big she's gotten in just 1 month. And it's amazing. You start feeding them rats and they convert those rats to, like, you can feed them like 10 pounds of rats and they'll actually gain like 5 pounds of body mass. It's amazing the conversion between how much they eat and how much they actually put on that body weight is pretty amazing. And if you just watch me on some of these videos trying to pick her up, as a matter of fact, when I was first trying to weigh her, I was weighing her in a bucket on a scale, and it almost got to the point where this is where I realized I think I need a different technique, because this bucket on this balance does not really work very good. She barely fit in the bucket here. And at this point, I think she was about 51 pounds. Actually, if we just wait just a few seconds here, we can actually look at how much she's actually weighing on this balance. It was like 51.4 pounds. So she was really big at this point. She was really a monster snake. And let me tell you, 50, that was 30 pounds lighter than she is today. And I thought she was a big snake back then. And to actually get her and try to handle her today with an extra 30 pounds is quite a handful. She is really big even back then. She's a really good looking snake. That is pretty cool. I love these old videos. It's kind of like watching old home videos on YouTube. It is pretty cool. And this is actually, so I actually just put her in that boa tub just temporarily, and then I would move her over back to her enclosure. It's pretty much what I do anymore, instead of, you know, trying to figure out, you know, put her, I know a lot of people actually put them in totes or something like that, instead of, you know, trying to move them to a boa tub or something. Actually, what would be ideal is if you had two enclosures, one on top of another, then you clean the top one, then I just moved her up, then I wouldn't have to keep moving her back and forth. Not that it really makes a difference, but look at how long she is. She is super long. Even back then, she is really massive. And if we move forward a little bit more, this was pretty cool. This is actually in December of last year. I actually paired her up with my other reticulated python, my male. This was pretty cool because I was actually trying to breed them and she didn't actually go, but actually having two really big snakes. So this is Lucy here in the back, and then up in the front here, this is Sunny, and he's part super dwarf, about half the size of Lucy here. You can see they're both really big snakes. It's pretty incredible. They're really big, it's pretty amazing. Then unfortunately they didn't lay eggs last year. Here's another one. This is another one in December. She was like hunting for a rat in this one. I thought it was pretty cool. And it's pretty cool angle. You can definitely tell she's filling up that enclosure more and more every month. Seems like every month I look in there, she's like, wow, that snake's grown so much, I can't even believe it. And if we keep moving along, this is another one in December. This is when I was feeding her a rat. She'll actually grab a rat in this one. This is pretty close to the other one, pretty much back to back. Sometimes I'd record them pretty close to each other, and then sometimes I'd skip a few months, and I think right at the end I skipped like 5 months. It was pretty amazing, the dramatic difference between the videos. This one's really cool. So I actually tried to pair them up again in January. I thought this was neat because they're all kind of crawling on top of each other. It was almost mesmerizing to watch these snakes on top of each other, just crawling around. It was amazing, and they filled the entire enclosure. This is in my 6-foot enclosure on my pool table in my basement. It is pretty amazing. And sometimes you can just watch these snakes for hours on end. It's just amazing. Some of the interactions between the reticulated pythons. All right, so this one was kind of interesting too. This was actually when Lucy was stuck in a really bad shed, and I moved her up to the bathtub to actually try to give her a bath and get that stuck shed off. It's the only time I've really done it. I probably won't do it again. She was a handful trying to get her up into the shower, and she was actually crawling all over the place, all over the walls, up the walls and all over. And I was kind of freaking out because I thought she was gonna get out, and it was just kind of funny how she was just crawling all over the place. And it didn't really help to get the shed out because I only had her in there like 20 minutes. And I think it was probably better just to kind of spray her down in her enclosure instead of moving this snake to a bathtub. But I just thought it was interesting. I actually moved her to the bathtub. That was kind of a fun video. And here's another one. This is in March, so you can definitely tell in this video she's definitely getting quite a bit bigger. In this one you can definitely tell she's filling up the enclosure. And then over here, this is actually where I bring her in and try to weigh her again. This is actually in April. And in April, I think she weighed 67 pounds, something like that. You can definitely tell she is getting a lot bigger. She is a really big monster snake. You can definitely tell. This is pretty much where I decided, all right, this snake is too big for me. I realized on this video, this is pretty much the tipping point when I tried to move her into the tub by myself. And I was like, this is, you know, it wasn't really the mass of the snake and the weight. It was really the length that was really difficult, trying to get her into that tub by myself. And then over here, this is in June, so it was a little bit heavier in June. Look at how big that snake is getting. This is pretty much, I actually had an assistant on this one that was kind of watching, kind of walking behind me, but this is actually, you can definitely tell I was having to struggle here trying to weigh the snake again. As a matter of fact, I changed it a little bit in the next video where I actually took the snake and I tared the balance, and then I just stepped on the balance to weigh the snake instead of trying to put the snake in a tub like this was really a challenge. So take a look at this one. This is the one, this is my latest one, November 4th, which was just a couple weeks ago. And I was trying to stand on the balance and weigh the snake, and the snake was trying to take off, and you really can't weigh him with two people. Look at how big that snake is. It is really huge. It's amazing it started from just a tiny little snake, and this is where I think the weight came in on this one at about 86 or 87 pounds. That is a really big snake. And then I fed her quite a few rats since then, so I'm sure she's probably over 90 pounds. Matter of fact, I have her paired up again, and I actually saw her in a copulation. So I'm thinking this year, her 4th year, she's 4 years old. I'm thinking that she might actually lay some eggs this year, which would be pretty cool. And a girl like that, I'm thinking she'll probably lay, maybe she'll lay, I've actually heard some people saying that a snake that big can actually lay up to 80 plus eggs. So I could get an incredible amount of eggs from that one snake. All right, so it is time for the question of the day. And Derek Ryan asks, when are you gonna add a pair of breeding boas to your collection? And that is a very good question. As a matter of fact, I am thinking about getting a couple boa constrictors. Every time I go to a reptile show, I'm looking at all the different boas, kind of thinking and pondering. The only thing is, when it comes to boas, the genetics are completely different than ball pythons. So they have completely different names, completely different genes for a lot of the stuff, and I haven't really decided which gene I want to invest in. I don't really have a handle on all the genes when it comes to boas. The other interesting thing about boas is they're actually live bears instead of laying eggs. So they'll actually have live hatchlings. You don't need an incubator, which is pretty cool. But the other problem is with boas, a lot of times people are saying that they'll only breed every 2 or 3 years because they're really difficult to actually get to breed versus ball pythons. Usually with ball pythons, you get a clutch every single year. So that is pretty much it. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.